Welcome to the Union Jews podcast. The UK's only all things union show. Carefully curated for your digital downloadable listening pleasure. Hello, and welcome to Union Jews, the UK's only all things union podcast. I'm Simon Sapper, and coming up on the show this time round,
we've taken a pretty rubbish WordPress website with a Google map that just showed the points to now a searchable postcode-based map that, as of this week, has launched the ability to host campaigns.
I particularly like the map bit because I'm a geography teacher. But it gave us those two bits of data, who was going on strike and where it was happening, and that does not exist. The Office for National Statistics didn't even hold that data, as far as we know.
Well, that was first Henry and then Rob, creators of the game changer that is StrikeMap. And we'll be hearing lots more from Rob and Henry in just a little while. But first, our usual very warm welcome to Glasgow University's Professor of Work and Employment, Mel Simms, who this week in Thought for the Week talks about that other perennial game changer, technology. Mel reports back from the Resolution Foundation Conference on Workers and Tech and finds the glass surprisingly half full.
I spent part of this week at the Worker Tech conference organised by the Resolution Foundation in London. The focus was on how tech can be used to support low-wage workers. And it was a great event. It brought together tech developers who have ideas about how to support workers, together with investors, regulators, and foundations that have an interest in helping to ensure that the benefits of technological development in the world of work benefit all of us. And when I write about the future of work, the main point I'm often making is that too often technological developments are being introduced with only a focus on the interests of capital and employers. Too often, there's little or no thought given to what workers want and need. So the conference was a really refreshing opportunity to hear a wide group of people with very different perspectives discuss the risks and opportunities facing us all. Some investors are increasingly focusing on the social return on their investments as well as the financial return. Tech entrepreneurs are designing apps to support workers to apply for jobs, to find shifts that suit their lives, and to enforce their rights. And unions were really well represented, with speakers making important points about how central unions are to building good work into tech development. Across all of the groups, there was a broad agreement that the state has a really crucial role to play in supporting these activities, especially in areas around skills and training. And it was refreshing to hear such unanimity on this point, although I have to say there wasn't a huge amount of optimism that there'd be any money to support skills initiatives in the near future. Overall, the tone of the conference was much more optimistic than I'd anticipated. It's very clear to me that there are people doing really good work to put workers and unions at the heart of new tech development, but it's also clear that they'll need support and nurturing to help make sure good work is central to the future of developments in these areas.
Many thanks, Mel, particularly this week when I know you've been badly under the weather. And I feel sure we'll be hearing more on workers and tech in the coming weeks. StrikeMap is undoubtedly a slam dunk success story. The brainchild of Poole and Henry Fowler, it is a real-time online map showing industrial action. How many are involved? Who's the employer? When did it start? When will it start? Where's it taking place? The value of this is so obvious that it's amazing no one thought of it before. And that's exactly what Rob and Henry thought when they set up the project in 2020. Now, over 230,000 strike actions have been mapped, and StrikeMap's data is sought out by journalists, academics and researchers. But how did it all start? What is the story of Rob and Henry's journey that led them to StrikeMap? Where did the idea come from? And what does it take to put it into practice? What needs to happen just to keep it going? And we don't stop there. Rob and Henry talk about how StrikeMap's values and vision have propelled them into new ventures like strike clubs, international union campaigns, and pushing political education back onto the agenda in a big way. How they deal with not being identified as part of any faction or grouping, and what happened when the Daily Mail tried to smear them at the back end of 2022. And then there's the still fresh partnership between StrikeMap and the General Federation of Trade Unions, the GFTU. For my money, this is highly significant. But what is the rationale? What are the hopes and expectations? Rob and Henry give us the inside track, a ringside seat, a unique perspective, and it's a hell of a ride. So, get yourself a cuppa, put your feet up, break out the good biscuits. Here we go. Rob, Henry, you're very welcome to Union Juice. Thanks so much for taking time to join us for this episode. What has been your own trade union and campaigning journeys? What brought you up to StrikeMap? Henry, how did you start?
Thanks very much for having us, Simon. It's great to be a part of this podcast. It's fantastic the work that you do.
Thank you.
My journey started coming straight out of university, ended up working in a call centre in a local hometown, big employer. It's fair to say the conditions weren't too brilliant. And staff, after working really hard over Christmas, at the last minute were told by management that the bonuses they'd all been working for were not going to be awarded because there'd been a decline in one of the metrics that they were measuring. These bonuses, which subsidised very low pay, were really sought after. And as a result, people started to speak about the issues. There was no trade union. There was no sense of collectivity outside of the call metrics. And people spoke with me. We organised some unofficial meetings off the premises, on the premises, in the car park. And we put to management clear demands about reinstating that bonus and discussed action if that wouldn't happen. And from there, we won the pay rise and we run the bonuses back. And people started to begin unionising in a quite difficult environment, as so many have. And it shows you that, we say in the Organise Now project, connected to StrikeMap, no worker left behind. But really, it is that simple. So from there, after all that activism and fun, I left that to join a trade union and become a staff member and took the jump from activist to bureaucrat. And I've been doing that a large portion of my life now. I've worked for two different education trades unions before, just around lockdown, meeting Rob virtually, of course. And that's when everything kind of changed. And that's where we got to now with the advent of StrikeMap and Organise Now and the other things that me and Rob have done together.
And Rob, what's your trade union story? What journey has brought you to StrikeMap? And I'm just to flag up, the next question I'm going to ask you both is how did you meet? Because this is like the Lennon and McCartney of trade union organising. So,
Yeah, so my journey is very different to Henry's, really. Sort of after university, I worked for a carpet company, really poor conditions. My dad worked for the company before that for 30 odd years. And he used to come home and he used to tell me, we should form a union. There's no, the union that there is, nobody's a member. It's rubbish. And he used to bring these stories on, but never anything ever happened. And I used to see how it really, drove him down. He, didn't enjoy his job. And it was quite sad to see that, really. I worked for the company myself and paying conditions were pretty awful. But it was just sort of accepted. That's how it was. In the financial crisis, I saw the writing on the wall, shops closing down, people being made redundant, and retrained as a teacher. And I started teaching in 2011. Obviously, going from retail, very unorganised, to education, which is, suddenly a couple of big education unions. I joined both of the big unions in my first year. I think it's free to join, NASWT and the NUT. At that time, I wasn't particularly political. I wasn't particularly, militant in the trade unions. But then the school I was in was a recent academy converter, and loads of issues, lots of staff very unhappy. Whole new management had been brought in. They'd been brought in before the school had converted and had been sort of running in the background for a while. So they came in The school suddenly had to hire lots of outside contractors to run all the services. Quality of services went down. Staff were very unhappy. And then we used to have union meetings, so I used to go along, not really sure what they were, and see people balloting, losing the ballot. People are unhappy but losing the ballot. And, it's quite dispiriting to see, go from a completely disorganised workplace to something which was much more organised, and still see that they can't win these gains. And that's kind of the way it is throughout a lot of the trade union movement. I think, people, members, but not engaged, people not without the political education. We did go on strike, but not, that was the national campaign. That would have been around 2011-12, which was the pensions campaigns. So that was my first time ever out on strike. But again, I didn't go to a picket line. I didn't join. I didn't go in, but I took the time off, And we made some gains, but it was sort of seen as a sort of a marginal victory, I think. And then really, again, sort of my politics started sort of going further leftwards the longer I was teaching, as I sort of saw pupils coming in, hungry pupils coming in, and seeing the home conditions, and seeing that, this is austerity now, so declining mental health services, declining funding in schools. And at the same time, seeing Henry's campaigns, really, before I knew Henry, seeing the build-up in with the union's rhetoric, and then obviously the rise of Jeremy Corbyn and people becoming a lot more politicised, and the excellent campaigns that the NEU did around school cuts, which managed to massively shift it. And I think I started sort of seeing the power of a union, but still, I was sort of a member but not engaged. And then it was COVID really that sort of really gave me the kick to get involved, and it was Henry's fault. I used to say to him, well, what's the union doing? And he said to me, so Rob, it's like a gym membership. A union membership's a gym membership. You only get out what you put into it. Made me feel a bit guilty. And I always use that one, with any new members at my work. I thought, well, it's COVID. People have been saying to me for years, you're political, you're interested in this. Why aren't you the rep? I didn't have a rep at my school. Fairly, it's a good school. We don't have lots of problems, but, there's always people, people have issues that they want to raise, and nobody wants to stick their head above the parapet. So I thought, during COVID, you kind of need someone to liaise. I'll send an email to the NEU and say, can you please tell me what's involved with being a union rep? And I got an email back saying, congratulations on your appointment as the new union rep. And then within a sort of a week or so, a member at my work needed representing. So I said, well, I'm not just being the rep without an election. So they sort of very quickly did an election within my workplace, and I became the union rep, and never looked back. And the role, I really enjoy the role. I enjoy representing members. And during the recent strike, we've had fantastic turnout in our ballots, good turnout on the picket lines. And it's the difference that a rep in a school makes, or any workplace, obviously. Yeah. And a rep who's engaged, and a rep who, is willing to put the work in as well. And I think with the work that Henry and I do in StrikeMap, it's all those different angles. It's getting people into unions, getting reps into workplaces, and getting those people organised and actually engage with the role. So that's my union role. And then obviously
we could almost stop there, because you two have both had such interesting journeys that lots of people will empathise with, and even more will admire, in terms of getting in there and doing the work. I mean, I love the idea of union membership being like a gym card. That is great. That's excellent. I'm going to treasure that one and plagiarise it, Henry. I can assure you. So, how then did the two of you meet, and where did the idea for StrikeMap come from?
During COVID, there was a lot of talk of key workers, wasn't there? And what I saw was that this concept of key workers was really divorced from the labour movement. And it seemed to be that there was no one making that connection. The unions were doing really well. The NEU was basically dictating education policy on lockdowns and stuff during the crisis. And they were leading the way. We had hundreds of thousands of people on the biggest ever online union meeting, doing fantastic. But I thought there was this disconnect. And I thought, what could we do in a small way online to try and link up the labour movement with this concept of key workers and get into people's minds, sort of the link in the traditions of the labour movement. So I had just it's a little idea. It was, let's get everyone online wearing red T-shirts, recording video messages, taking pictures, holding up signs saying, I'm wearing red for my key workers, red for workers. So it was a hashtag, red for workers. And I contacted people I knew, people who had known from other political campaigns. So Henry had loads of contacts. I emailed loads of people, and people sort of just, it won't work that, It would work if you had 1 million people out on the streets doing it. It won't work online. Henry said, yeah, let's do it. And that's, I'd known Henry through some other campaigns that I'd been involved with, but this, Henry, he's a workhorse, he's not a show pony, as he likes to say. He's a workhorse, and you send Henry a message, yeah, let's do it, whereas other people, it won't work. Yeah, that's a nice idea, but I'm busy. Henry's like, let's do it. And he got a designer involved. I think it was called in a favour. And we made some cards, and we got contact people, and we got it trending on Twitter on May Day 2020, which, beyond our sort of expectations. And we made loads of links. And then from that, Henry had the idea that maybe we can take this beyond the one day. And then from this, we've had loads of ideas come off it, but StrikeMap's the main one. But that was Henry's brainchild, so I'll let him explain how that came about.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Red for Key Workers seems so far away, doesn't it, now, from where we are today? We had started to build a relationship between us. Red for Key Workers had been a couple of months, and we talked about different ideas about how to take it forward. And we'd seen part of the virtual Labour Notes conference in the US, because obviously it had to be cancelled in person, and knew about Labour Notes as part of the tradition of rank and file organising in America. But it felt like to me that our movement really lacked that institution. And that for me has always been a goal for the future, and one that me and Rob share. And we spoke to some people after Red for Key Workers involved in the founding of Labour Notes, and we're trying to work through some of the difficulties of how that would apply. And so it gets to December, and Rob's a really big reader, and as am I, read a lot. And I was reading this book, and the book was about workers' inquiry, so the tool of understanding the power of workers, but then also how the power of production within a certain part of our capitalist society works, and then how those things play off, strike threats, tactics, strategies, and some of the things around supply chains, and then how that fits globally with global companies and global workers, and how that fits. And it was a book edited by Robert Avets, who since has become a friend of mine, which I'm delighted to say. He's a fantastic author and a real insight, and a fantastic activist in his life. But he wrote a chapter in this book about organising higher education workers in California. And in that, he talked about how he had, through his own strike threat in his workplace, which wasn't particularly successful in moving the employer, wasn't strong enough. He created a matrix for understanding strike threats. But coming out of it, he had a research idea for the wider movement in the US. And that was for everyone to submit on a Google form where they'd made a strike threat. Again, it's slightly different culturally in America than you'd say here. You wouldn't normally call a strike threat. You don't have the same levels of national collective bargaining or contract ending where you can say it's a threat before you actually get through a balloting process. It's slightly different, isn't it? But you just type in, I've had a strike threat, it's won or it's failed. And then some of the other ideas around it. And it was a really basic Google form, and people were submitting to it, and it was random and it was self-selecting, and people would submit to it. And Robert was obviously trying to get that out there. So I read that. I thought, wow, that is excellent. How fantastic is that? Like trying to understand that a bit better. There's no strikes happening really in the UK, bar the health and safety walk-offs, which Rob's covered a little bit, and a bit of that in the US. And so I messaged Rob quite excited, and this was on the 22nd or 23rd of December. And I said, I've just read the chapter in this book. What if we did a map of all strikes? Now, at the time, I had, despite being involved in the labour movement and working for one of the biggest national trade unions, I had no idea which workers were on strike. I mean, I could go and Google it and find the odd press release or whatever, but I personally had no idea. So I said to Rob, what if we do the simple Google form, pop it up on a Google map, every single strike in, at the time, the United Kingdom?
Brilliant.
Rob, I think Rob's response was, yeah, why isn't someone kind of like doing that? Why is that not happening? It's not like the most creative idea, really. You think like other organisations maybe with the resources would do it. And so then we started collecting in some strikes. It was just a free WordPress site. We just plugged it all in. And it just kind of, from our launch, we got a little bit of traction. Again, Rob had built some good contacts with some different parliamentarians. We had some good contacts with the union movement. And it just started to build. And then a few people shared it. And then it just went like overnight just really started to grow around that December period. Bear in mind, there's probably 50 strikes, I think, in the first year that we actually documented. So there would have only been 3 or 4 on there. I remember Prospect being one of them, and it was air traffic control off some part of the Scottish island or some part of Scottish air traffic control. So, quite niche strikes were on our map. It was pretty empty, actually. It was showing the lack of action. And that's when we came up with the aims that we have for the site now, which we try and instill in all of our work. But that was kind of it, really. And then more and more people wanted to talk to us about it, established people in the labour movement. But yeah, it's one of those things where everyone agrees it was a good idea, but why didn't we do it? And then over time, through fantastic individual donations, fantastic trades councils, trade union branches, and even national unions donating money, we've taken a pretty rubbish WordPress website with a Google map that just showed the points to now a searchable postcode-based map that, as of this week, has launched the ability to host campaigns. And at the moment is showcasing the Workers in Palestine campaign and all the different unions that have signed up to support that statement as part of that. So it really has in 3 years moved quickly, and we've gone to 230,000 workplaces and beyond that now, taking action from the 51 that we started with in that first year. And it's important to say that me and Rob are always clear on this. It reflects the struggle and the movement. Yeah. It's just a reflection. It's a mirror to the struggle that's happening. And you can see that with the usage of our site, despite, the ongoing promotion we do of it, it's most useful in times of intense struggle. So when there is a big strike, RMT, ASLEF, CWU, BMA, you'll see a huge increase of traffic on our site. And in between that is not used as much. But that doesn't bother us. That is the nature of the tool.
Indeed, but it's more than just a mirror, though, isn't it? Because the thing that you don't see when you look in a mirror is what everyone else is doing. And it's that connectivity, which is the bedrock of solidarity, that is something that's very, very special about what the two of you have created. You can't put a value on it, I don't think. But in practicalities, what's the kind of typical day or a week like if you're working on StrikeMap or you're a StrikeMap volunteer? What's the kind of rhythm of the work, or is it? Or are no 2 weeks the same?
Recently, we've partnered with the GFTU. I get some time to do StrikeMap as part of my move to the GFTU, and the GFTU partnering with StrikeMap. That's one of the big things, is that we get that full-time investment in the site. So that's only been 3 weeks, but it's starting to get a pattern to it. But I'll speak a little bit to that, and then probably Rob should speak about the large amount of volunteers and other people that are key people in different parts of the country that really keep the project going, because they're a majority of it. But, an average week will be making sure the map's up to date. That sounds a really easy thing. We have the best database of strikes in the country, no doubt. And if anyone needs to know strikes, they come to us. We have them documented. We don't always have the postcodes. We don't always have them put on our map. So translating between the database of every single strike, every single action, we even have every single ballot result that's published. We have everything documented for years, but trying to translate that and make sure we've got the postcodes getting out of the map. So making sure they're on the map. And if they're bigger strikes, try and have a conversation with the unions. We have a bulk uploading tool, which makes it easier. Rather than having to type in every single railway station, we can just upload all of them when the RMT or ASLEF take action, or other bigger unions that have got more work sites. So updating the map is a key part. Working with our fantastic head of communications, who's a volunteer. I think she's absolutely incredible. And you've seen a real development of our communications approach since they took it on and took it off. Mainly me, but Rob also, like really, really high levels of engagement, high levels of fun. And it really resonates with people, I think. So making sure that we've got some of that social media plan, anything that's coming up, any events or anything that we're looking to post. Normally there'll be a discussion in the steering group. So we have a steering group that has members as part of it who manage the project, and people have different specialisms. So we'll have a discussion during the week about something. It may be a new affiliation that we've had in, or it may be a discussion around, for instance, the map we've been updating recently. So we've been talking about how do we deploy some of those changes? How do we relate that to existing affiliates and those kind of things? So yeah, I think that from me, that would be it. And then there seems to constantly be some kind of newsletter or email we have to get ready to one group, whether it's our strike clubs, whether it's our reps network, or whether it's, like I said, our head of comms does the weekly email that has the strikes of the week in it, which I think is the most important information we provide, actually. But from my perspective, that will be kind of my week. And then there's the one-off bits. So at the moment, we're getting ready for our launch of our new reprint of the JT Murphy pamphlet with Manifesto Press in Manchester. If you're listening to this and you've not got a ticket, come 7th of December, People's History Museum. There are free refreshments as well as good comradely discussion. So please come along. And then we've got also at the moment in the Southeast, our Strike Club in the Southeast organising a Strike fundraiser, which is quite a big gig down in Brighton. And we raised £300 to £400 for the RCN in April, doing something similar. So there's some one-off kind of event pieces that are part of the work that I'm doing at the moment. But I don't know if Rob wants to talk about some of the other stuff with all of the different strike clubs and all the different volunteers and other bits and bobs that Rob gets asked.
Yeah, I mean, Robert, and just about in, I mean, how many people roughly are involved in StrikeMap then? I mean, it sounds like a significant number of people.
I suppose if you went back to when we first started, it was me and Henry, and it was mostly Henry, if I'm honest, putting in an awful lot of work. And I think a few times the project could have failed. And it's only through the amazing volunteers, friends, family members sometimes pulling in. So how many people are involved? It will vary, really. We have the steering group, which is a fairly small group, but then we also have volunteers who aren't on the steering group. So we have one volunteer who keeps the list up. We have like 3 or 4 volunteers who do the uploads. They try and do it in sort of shifts. We have one person who does the majority of the comms. We have one person who does the design work for us. We have a developer. And we're lucky enough now that we've managed to receive some grant funding from Barry Meal Trust, which means that we can actually pay some of these people for the time that they give, which, as you know, in the trade union movement and every other activist-based thing, everything's done for free and in your spare time. And it wasn't sustainable for a long time. And it was, Henry tearing his hair out, trying to spin a million plates at once and trying to do a full-time job and be a family man and be a Chelsea supporter for his sins. And so we are really lucky now to have that team of volunteers who can take up some of the slack. And then that's the people we have who are working on it, all the time. But then we also have people emailing in or messaging in with, tips. We have people from the unions who will contact us when something's happening. We have people contacting us constantly with ideas, which is fantastic. We launched the strike clubs. Was that a year ago? More than a year ago now? A couple of years ago? And the idea there was to try and get this sort of mass participation, get people involved in it. So it wasn't just something that was online. And that's been a big thing. When we started, it was an archive. That was all it basically was, wasn't it, Henry? The idea was we would just create a list of all the strikes that were taking place, because as Henry said, that didn't exist. I particularly like the map bit because I'm a geography teacher, but it gave us those 2 bits of data, who was going on strike and where it was happening, and that does not exist or did not exist at the time in any form. The Office for National Statistics didn't even hold that data, as far as we know. You get the days lost to strike action, but that's about it. And we didn't realise at the time that it would be such a lot of work. We thought we'd put it on the map, it would stay on the map, we'd archive it once a year and we'd start a new map. But we've been, the first year, I think we did a massive celebration of our 100th strike on the map. And then we didn't expect this summer of solidarity where we had, how many did we have at its highest point? So 1,000, tens of thousands on the map, 20,000 schools when the schools were on strike. And
all of Scotland was on strike schools. You had Royal Mail, you had RMT, you had Aston Faction, and then NEU's 22,000 workplaces. So it's just too many to count.
Yeah. The website crashed. We had to remove a lot of functionality. And again, we thought we were going to have to shut down just because we couldn't cope with the amount of hits coming through. And then it was only through generosity of people volunteering. It's those little donations. We have people who pay us £5 a month. We have union branches that affiliate for small amounts each year. And we had a couple of bigger donations, which really helped us keep going. But yeah, it's a labour of love that we do. And there's always seems to be something. That's the exciting bit about StrikeMap. Like Henry said, we'll be ticking along, and then someone will come to us with an idea. Can you help us with this? Like the Strike fundraisers, we've done a few of them now. We did a StrikeMap football shirt with the Trade Union Football Alcohol Committee. We've done a couple of conferences, which is, as Henry said, something we'd like to do even more. We did our own online web show, Comrades. You have to sing Comrades to the theme tune of Neighbours in your head. That's what which was very popular and gave us lots of publicity, not always from the right places.
There's clearly been a very big and very positive response, but if you think about all the responses you had to the work that you're doing, are there any that have particularly surprised you and it made you stand back and think, oh, didn't see that coming, or blimey, never thought of that, or how dare they say that? I mean, any that particularly stick in the mind?
Our front page exclusive on the Daily Mail is obviously one of them.
I was going to get to that next. Excluding the front page exclusive on the Daily Mail.
I mean, just the positivity that has come from everyone. We've been sent, a couple of books that we've been mentioned in. And it's really humbling, really, that people see it so useful. We've been contacted by the Financial Times using our data last Christmas with the strikes over the Christmas period. The New York Times, I believe, contacted us. Did The Economist? I think
Economist, the New Yorker ran an article with us, which
the New Yorker
is a big deal. I don't know what the New Yorker really is.
The Mirror embedded our map on their website. I did an interview on Metro Radio in South Africa, who wanted to talk to us about it. We've recently been interviewed for a Swiss newspaper, and like I say, it's humbling that people care so much of something that we invented over WhatsApp with a free WordPress site and a Google form. It's those personal messages as well from trade unions. StrikeMap was so useful to us. We could go to a picket line. We had people turning up at the picket line and showing us the StrikeMap. And that was, like I say, our main aims, which our guiding principles, our four main aims, were to show the amount of struggle and to encourage other workers in their struggle. That was sort of our main ones. And if we've done that a little bit, then we've done our job right. And we've had our detractors. I won't name any large trade union organisations who aren't happy with us and don't want anything to do with us. But they are out there, and we'd always say that we don't hold grudges. Our door is always open if they want us to help, because at the end of the day, we're with the workers always.
Yeah. Henry, anything that sticks in your mind particularly?
I think that we were interviewed for that BBC programme that aired around the striking, the RCN. They had RCN with Pat Cullen, Sharon and Unite, and Mick Lynch. They'd never used us. That was upsetting. They used some rolling stock from where they filmed us. But that was quite an amazing thing to think that you'd be filmed and potentially part of documenting this period of strikes. I think that was quite amazing. Rob's talked about the press angle, I think, well, but I think also the thing that's developed quite nicely, but we don't put a lot of effort into it, is the way internationally it's encouraged people to think about some projects they're already involved in, or to take those projects in different ways. And what I mean by that is we're proud to be a board member of the International Association of Strikes and Social Conflict. And through their conference last year, we met people from Cambodia that are mapping strike action.
Wow.
From Turkey, from other countries all around the world, and including in Amsterdam, there's a university that is mapping every single strike ever. Wow. Trying to get data sets together to create a master set. And so you start to meet with people and talk about different innovative ideas. And we've built a relationship with the Cornell Labour Tracker, which has got a whole university behind them to do it, completely the opposite of us, but they're producing a really good tool. Payday Report, again, the first map in America that we spoke with. They're a more journalistic, activist-led organisation. But to think about that kind of international linkage, and we're in a position now where we've developed our map so that if there isn't that organisation within those countries, you can actually plot your strike action. Our map actually is now genuinely global. We don't really publicise or work hard to get action from all over the world on it. Like I said, there are other projects in different sister countries, but that is available now. So I think that being part of an international group of people that are looking to map struggle, understand struggle, but also, try and show that there is more of it happening than a lot of people. And that mainstream narrative wants you to know what doesn't matter what country you're in. And I think being a link between the kind of activist core and the academic analysis and the theory that has driven this period, and trying to act as a link between those so that we don't have theory without practice, and that our practice does have a theoretical edge. And again, that's been through that international association, but in general, we've been able to do that. I think the interesting thing is that what we've built is truly non-sectarian. We've supported different initiatives which have been clearly from different groups, trying to do things beyond their own organizations. And that actually worries people. That's what I've been shocked by. Actually, when you're clearly identified as part of a political organization with a clear set of, whether it be prejudices or people or approaches to the way that you do things, people kind of trust that, not knowing that StrikeMap has the core 4 aims, and we stick by them. Whether it comes from one group or another, we stick by them. Obviously, there are notable exceptions. Except we've got no tolerance for racism, xenophobia, of any discrimination on the grounds of anything to do with your gender, ethnicity, of all of those things. But is being able to be a trusted, and that's started to put us in a good place, in the sense of now people come to us and say, we'd like you to be a part of this. And that's also quite a nice thing. We don't always have to do all the work behind something, but StrikeMap's not just a logo, but is something that we can publicize. We do have a mailing list. It's pretty serious for an organization our size. So I think that moving into that space, and maybe potentially in the next 5 years becoming an institution within the labour movement that's useful to activists forever, rather than just a fleeting activist dream.
I think you've knocked the notion of being a fleeting activist dream well out of the park, I have to say. So far out of the park that actually it landed up in the court of the Daily Mail, which we mentioned in passing. And listeners, if you're not aware, you can Google StrikeMap and the Daily Mail, and you will find, I presume it's still there, from the 27th of December 2022, the Mail bursting a blood vessel in outrage over the fact that Rob and Henry were rewarding people for going on picket lines and expressing solidarity. And were you as surprised as anyone else when this story broke? Did they approach you for comment? How did it work?
Henry came to me with this idea. He said, and we do this every now. We WhatsApp each other, and I'll say, "I've got an idea. We're going to do this." And he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And he sent me a message saying, "What about if we have a loyalty card? Like you might get it from a coffee shop chain or something. And if you go to a picket line, you fill in a form." And it was a bit of a gimmick, really, wasn't it? It was a bit of a laugh. It was around Christmas. There was a lot of strike action taking place. And we saw it as a bit of a joke. We normally get a bit of a heads up when we're going to be in the Daily Mail or something, because they follow us on Twitter. And suddenly it pings up on Twitter, "You've been followed by Daily Mail journalist." And Henry sends a message around, keep an eye out. But I don't think we sort of in our wildest dreams expected a front page, full spread. But no such thing as bad publicity, That put us in a lot of people's good books. If you're hated by the Daily Mail, then, you're doing something right. But how much would it cost to take out a full page advert on the Daily Mail? I don't know.
On the front page as well, yeah.
So we were quite happy with that. I think it's probably one of our proudest achievements.
Well, I mean, you kind of know you've arrived in a sense if you touch so many sore points in the Daily Mail's collective psyche. But I mean, how many readers do they have online? It's something huge, isn't it? It's about close to 1,900,000, something like that. And suddenly StrikeMap is being waved around loudly and flagrantly in front of 900,000 people. It's a spectacular own goal.
The interesting thing about it is we'd been in a previous paper, because we had hosted a show that Rob talked about earlier called Comrades, and we'd had some NEU members that had talking through that period of the January, Boris Johnson changing his mind and shutting schools for the January comeback. And that had been picked up by the Mail and then was regurgitated by the Sun, and they'd kind of used a lot of our photos and video content without permission. And that was when they first kind of contacted us and emailed us asking for comment. for something. But that when, in terms of, when you get those kind of like share this article on Twitter and you just see like hundreds of the same thing, that was quite extreme. And there was a lot of that. So like you say, what it does is it's not just the people in the comments section, which definitely don't read if you're a subject of any of these articles. It can be tempting, but don't. Is when you go on social media and you just see like that article being shared like by 10,000 people because they've read it and they're outraged and they've pressed the share button off the page, and then it just grows from there. But it is interesting to note, as Rob says, there tends to be a follow you. There tends to be also a reusing of articles through different right-wing newspapers, something I wasn't probably aware of, but it was literally done like that. They just chopped and pasted it out, and what was in the Mail was in the Sun, was then in the Express. And yeah, like I said, we've managed to have embeds in the Mirror. We've been used by Financial Times, New Yorker magazine, and our data has been asked for by lots of different organizations, organizations that we would say are a bit more credible in terms of their political and economic and both societal analysis and commentary of what's happening.
And in the unlikely event that the Mail might ask you for some data, would you oblige? I'm not going to repeat what's being mouthed at me, listeners. It's all polite, I promise you. Looking to something that's unambiguously positive, I think, and also continuing the tradition of being innovative, and that's the tie-up with the GFTU, the General Federation of Trade Unions. So what's kind of the rationale for that, and what does each side get from the deal?
I'll come in on this one. So we've been reaching periods of kind of like expansion. We kind of settled down. We've grown that volunteer team. We've got the structures and the support in place to make the map more sustainable. We've had some funding which has sustained us, and that's kept pretty consistent during a period now of over 18 months. So it feels good, but we're only always ever 3 or 4 bits of national action, especially with different patterns of action, which obviously in escalating disputes happens, from that being quite unmanageable and quite difficult, and the pressure on certain volunteers to maintain our presence as what it is, to make sure that we're up to date, to make sure, because we are taken a bit more seriously, that people do look at us, whether that's right or wrong, as a kind of official source. So we needed to make sure that we had a bit of like institutional support, and we needed to have a future where we could turn around and say, actually, StrikeMap is based here. It will get this amount of resource and funding, and it will have this amount of time. And in the short term, that's going to be a bit of my time through the GFTU, but maybe in the long term could build a group of people, whether it be part-time, full-time, or a mixture of the both, that look to support StrikeMap as a project as it grows and builds and continues to connect more outside of the digital sphere and builds those strike clubs, so that we have solidarity gigs in every single one of those regional strike clubs across England, Wales, Scotland at the moment, and that we start to see our reps network hosting different types of events across, but then also having a realistic place where people meet up and talk about these things and things that matter, and making sure they're going to picket lines and linking up with all the fantastic trades councils and having a real renewal that these disputes have done to our movement. We've had people leading disputes that have never led disputes before. We've had a whole generation of people now that are ready for the kind of what next. So we've got big plans with StrikeMap, and it was a question of, we're getting to a point where we either realise that and go for something a bit bigger, or we kind of accept what we are. But in reality is we're 2 or 3 big periods of action, or big periods where some of our volunteers will be knocked out from really just fizzling out. And we just got to that point, and we'll be 3 years in December. And it felt like that was a good place to go. We'd spoken with different organizations about how they could up their maybe financial support or maybe institutional support. But the General Federation of Trade Unions, straight away, with change in leadership, a slightly different executive, was like really keen to see StrikeMap as part of the core mission of GFTU, which has always been solidarity from its foundations historically. You can read the official history of the GFTU, you can read whatever you like on the internet, but you'll see that solidarity in building strike funds and making sure that people who are involved in huge disputes against really powerful employers during periods of either less or more unionization are able to band together to beat those employers, beat lockouts, and to beat all the other tactics of the bad boss. So for us, it really seemed to fit that with that solidarity angle, and then also with the developing reps network and strike clubs, to really have an avenue for education. The education offering, which a lot of people won't know about from the General Federation of Trade Unions Educational Trust, is quite incredible. The amount of courses they're running this year, whether it be a roots of racism and looking at the structural problems under the society we have, and then how we play that out as being anti-racist in our union work and society, to building links with community groups we don't even think about within natural union activity, to bring those together to build stronger connections in our communities, to being your kind of skills-based courses that, you know, you hope your representatives get access to, whether that be health and safety reps, workplace reps. So it really has a whole offering, and of course free courses and events like the current trade union and working class history course, which is, you know, something we've not talked about, but we've been always keen on doing our book clubs and showcasing books that we think matter, and trying to give them to an audience of people that maybe take up those ideas or certainly talk about them in their union work and take them into how they organise in the future. And so that kind of felt like a real opportunity at the kind of right time for the StrikeMap steering group. Met and discussed it. The General Federation of Trade Unions executive met and discussed it. And, you know, we're at very early stages, but I think straight away it just makes us feel empowered. And I think the GFTU feel pleased to have something like StrikeMap as part of its offer moving into a period where digital-based solidarity organising and how that then links to the real world, which they already do, can be a really exciting partnership. And, you know, hopefully that continues to blossom and develop. And our steering group meets at the end of this month, actually, to meet with the GFTU to put some of those longer plans into place and to hopefully see the map continue to develop, but as a key part of GFTU. And if you look at the social media, there's little bits and bobs of how the partnership was working, and you can see how they can complement each other, whether it be the GFTU sending solidarity to affiliates or non-affiliates, and whether it be StrikeMap actually mapping those strikes, and therefore, you know, go to StrikeMap to see where the strikes are. You know, it's not as forced, it's very natural, and it's an easy relationship, and they work hand in hand.
Well, certainly I see the GFTU's appetite to come to an arrangement and an agreement with yourselves as tremendously exciting and a really important kind of strategic development in the British trade union movement. And I'll be discussing that and lots of other things as well with Gawain Little, the GFTU's new General Secretary, who's also going to be one of our guests in this series of Union Dues. So you've mapped out what the near future looks like as a result of the tie-up with the GFTU. And we've spoken in passing about the campaign facility that you're just introducing onto the site, which is currently responding to requests from the Palestinian trade union movement for expressions of support. And you've got a book launch coming. But I mean, if we were to reconvene this time next year or this time 2 years' time, and we look back over that period of time, 2024, 2025, 2026, what do you expect to happen? What do you think will happen? What would you like to happen?
There's definitely a few things. Development of what we've already got, fine-tuning of what we've got, making it easier for us to do what we do best, which is show where strikes are and help people get to them and encourage that solidarity. But we've also been adding in functionality behind the scenes to allow us, if the demand was there, to take the map global. And that's always been something that I've wanted to do since the outset. So we used to have a postcode search, but now it's an address search. If you look on it now, we've just put a load of strikes up for Sweden, which was Tesla plants in Sweden, which are on there. So we've got international strikes on. We have had them in Ireland in the past, and we did a big rebrand sort of to move us away from the sort of UK-based idea of it. We don't want to run before we can walk, so we want to make sure that we can give our core offering, and we can do a really good job of that. The campaign map side of it, which Henry discussed, that's, again, it's come out of demand from our users. You know, people have said, rather than just strikes, could we not also put this on? So we've listened and we've added that functionality. So that's a really exciting sort of movement. And we want to really build on our relationships with the trade unions who are affiliates, hopefully get some other unions to affiliate. And all of that, all the time, it is so we can help them do their job better. It takes work away from some of these unions. Something that Henry and I just feel really strongly about is just to allow, to make things as easy as possible for workers, make things as easy as possible for people who want to show solidarity with workers. So the book that we're launching soon is hopefully the first of a series of republished out of print pamphlets and books. Henry and I wrote the introduction to this one, and I said that we spend a lot of time in the trade union movement looking abroad, especially looking to America and what they're doing over there. And sometimes what we forget to do is look back 50 years, 70 years, and look what we've done well in the past. So JT Murphy is the first in the series, but the plan is for it to be a big series. And Manifesto Press have been fantastic, running with any ideas we've got. We're hoping for some other standalone book, which I've been just in discussion with them about StrikeMap and what we've learned from the journey so far. And again, everything we do has to hit those four aims. Is it showing what struggle is happening? Is it allowing other people to build their education of that struggle? I think if we stay firmly embedded in those four key aims, we can't go far wrong.
That's right. And that's what we have to do. And that's why the aims they're always important in any campaign or organising. But actually, as an organisation, to have those aims and stick to them as we have done, I think it has kept us in a good place. But I think that we've got this, like I said, we have a steering group meeting where we'll be discussing some of this and people are bringing forward idea papers. Don't forget, we're going to probably be having a Labour government in the near future. So the impact of what we do in and around that. You've got the advent of further anti-trade union laws and potential campaigns around not implementing those, resisting those from different employers. So thinking about that and how we play just a part in a bigger coalition that, just today, Matt Rack and Mick Lynch have written about how they're going to resist those laws and use the power of their unions, both locally and nationally, to do that. So there's that. I'd like to see the strike clubs have a real resonance and be a place that is either as linked to trades councils as part of a continual development of the trades councils of this country that keeps all of those people that have been involved in the struggles within an organisational unit that's just beyond their actual union. With what the Murphy book and the book in the Industrial Unionism series will be doing is it'll be saying we have to move beyond the shackles of individual different unions fighting within one sector and think about how do we harness workers' power in a more cohesive way, in a joint way, in an industrial way, in a sectoral way. And that's what we want to explore. Maybe look to our reps network and think about how we can further explore that and how that links to our sister project Organise Now, which is a project, that me and Rob are both involved in as well. And trying to move beyond old public sector areas of unionisation into newer areas. And there's lots of things that we're learning all the time from comrades in America about, whether it be from Amazon, Trader Joe's, Starbucks, etc., that we can start to use. But then also, I think getting to a point where we do a report each year of the levels of struggle, what's been put on our map, the use of our map, so that we can give an output. Certainly, Cornell do that very well. If you look at their map, the Labour Tracker, they do a monthly shot and then they do an annual report. And like I said, they've got a whole university behind them, so they obviously got that. So that's a bit easier. But I think those kind of things to give us more of an organisation on outside of the internet would be something we would like to do. But obviously we have the context of, a new government, anti-trade union legislation, and also what it seems to be a very similar monetary and fiscal policy from the current government. So we're looking at a period, I think, of struggle, and it's just how that struggle is coordinated. So maybe StrikeMap can be a place where that coordination discussion can happen.
Well, Henry and Rob, endless credit to you for not just coming up with the idea, not just putting it into practice, but continuing to look for ways to deliver on those four core values in a fast-changing world, uncertain politics, and providing just such the building blocks of solidarity. It's fantastic, and thank you so much for spending so much time having this chat, which, as you can probably tell, listeners, has excited me enormously. So, best of luck for the future, and I'm sure we'll keep in touch.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you very much, Simon. Cheers. Thank you.
Well, how would you describe that? What word would you use? Fascinating? Revealing? Exciting? Inspiring? All of the above? Perhaps some other word? It's a great story from humble beginnings to, well, who knows where this project and this collaboration will end up. One thing I think is absolutely for sure, this really does matter and it really does make a difference. And you can hear what the GFTU thinks of the tie-up when I have a chat with their General Secretary, Gawain Little, later on in this series. Lots to follow up on in that discussion, obviously, so head on over to makesyouthink.com, makes-you-think.com, to find the companion blog post containing all the signposting, all the links, and all the background you need. Well, we are just about out of time for this episode. My thanks to Mel and to Rob and to Henry. My thanks above all to you for your company over the last 45 minutes or so. It's been great to have you along. Do let us know what you think of what you've heard or what you think you'd like to hear. You can contact the show by email, unionjews@makesyouthink.com or on X @JewsUnion. To buy us a virtual coffee, visit ko-fi.com/unionjews. Don't forget, please, to like, rate, share and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. And do check out our sister show, Union Days, shortlisted in the Independent Podcast Awards and available wherever you get your podcasts. Union Jews is part of the Labour Radio Podcast Network, and you can access around 200 union-themed radio shows and podcasts through their portal, which is at Labour Radio Net. That's all one word, and Labour spelt the American way without the U, labourradionet.org. We'll be back with a special episode next week as the TUC convenes a special meeting to respond to the challenge of the disproportionate, non-consensual and dangerously ill-conceived Strikes Minimum Service Level Act, and as the government moves into the implementation phase in transport and education, we'll be assessing the Act, the rationale given for it, and the reality of trying to put it into practice. Available wherever you get your podcasts. Stay safe, be kind, and solidarity to all those defending those hard-won terms and conditions or campaigning for justice and dignity at work. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Union Jews. Bye for now. You've been listening to the Union Jews podcast, presented by me, Simon Sapper, music by Scott Holmes, a Makes You Think production.